Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of USA Global TV and Radio. The content presented is for informational purposes only and is intended to foster open discussion and debate. Viewer discretion is advised. USA Global TV and Radio does not endorse any particular viewpoint and encourages viewers to seek out additional information and perspectives. Saving America with Dr. David D. Schein.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. And let's dig into the news here. Trump assassination attempt number 2. Just as one assassination attempt was rather stunning, to have 2 in a short period of time is even more stunning. Sadly, this was again possible due to a failure to provide comprehensive security for former President Trump. While appreciation is appropriate for Trump's immediate detail, the overall security plan is clearly inadequate. In examining both attempts, the key message is that the plan for Trump's protection is not serious. I have to wonder aloud if the government employees at the top, extensively Democrats, are consciously not providing the appropriate type of coverage. Of course, there are some deranged Dems who have even called for Trump to be jailed or killed. In the most recent attempt, the whack job Ryan Ruth laid in wait along a fence line near the 5th hole of the Trump golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida. He reportedly laid there for 12 hours with a high-powered rifle and even wearing a GoPro to record the planned shooting. At the last minute, a member of Trump's security detail spied the barrel of the rifle and fired 4 shots. Ruth ran away to a nearby car and sped off. Here's the cool part. A lady saw Ruth run to the car. She recorded the license plate and immediately contacted the police. Ruth was tracked down shortly thereafter and is in custody. Great citizenship on display by the lady, and an attaboy to the agent who spotted and fired shots at the attempted killer. A motive is still in question. How I do want to mention that I hate to use this clown's name. Some of these crackpots just want to be famous regardless of how I get there. I would say that was absolutely true for John Lennon's killer, for instance. We know that this shooter is an ex-con, that he's been to the Ukraine, reportedly to support the war effort there, and that he most recently lived in Hawaii. He has a public defender now based on him not having much money, according to him. How did he get the funding for his trip to Florida and to obtain the rifle and the GoPro? We know about the vehicle that was reportedly stolen. Well, our sore loser Hillary Clinton just won't go away. She's reportedly promoting a new book. Hey, you would have to be a hardcore sycophant to buy a book by her. Despite claims that the Dems are going to tone it down against Trump after his first assassination, she roared away immediately after this second attempt. But to throw rocks at Trump reminds me of the famed phrase, people in glass houses should not throw stones. She and her wandering buddy have such a long list of scandals that an NPR piece goes on for pages about the Clinton scandals. Perhaps some younger members of our audience are not familiar with some of them. Let's see, Whitewater, Travelgate, Paula Jones, Monica Lewinsky, Vince Foster's death, Filegate, the Benghazi disaster, which was made famous by her infamous statements about the death of the ambassador and the 3 brave men who tried to defend the embassy. the highly questionable finances and expenses of the Clinton Foundation, and the famous server with government material kept at her house, and the erasures of thousands of emails before she surrendered it. More recently, who could forget the ties to Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton? So, in short, Hillary, nobody with any sense cares about you. You're a bitter old biddy. This is a cautionary tale. This will be your experience in the rest of the USA if the Soros-backed soft-on-crime DAs continue under incompetent Democrat leaders of many of our wonderful cities. I spent the last weekend in San Diego, California, and in reflecting on it, the song California Dreaming, a 1965 hit by the Mamas and Papas, came to mind. It was a beautiful song about a beautiful place. That was then. Today, California, after a dozen years of Democratic leadership, is ruined. Most know about the destruction of San Francisco and LA. Corporations and middle-class taxpayers are fleeing the state. San Diego, so far, seemed to be surviving the decline in the state. In general, the popular tourist area near the waterfront looked pretty good. While having breakfast at a nice cafe, I did see one of the worst-looking street people I have ever seen. I am not sure why the police did not remove this filthy and near-naked creature to a facility to help him out. That's not humanity as far as I'm concerned. Like any trip, I forgot an item and decided to take a walk to an urban Ross Dress for Less store. Turned out to be a 10-block walk. That was okay. And it was a nice walk until I arrived at the Ross store, which was not far from the courthouses in downtown San Diego. A guard outside the only operating door with a very quiet store on a Saturday afternoon should have been adequate notice. The guard let me into the store. Inside, I was greeted by 2 guards and a system to let consumers in and out of one entrance only. I was told I'd have to produce a receipt to exit the store. That was fine, as I have this habit of paying for things that I buy. Virtually everything in the store had those electronic tags that can only be removed with a gizmo at the checkout counter. I found my one item, although not really what I wanted, in the store crowded with merchandise, but not customers. This is from a disturbing story by Patty McMurray that appeared in the Gateway Pundit. It begins with a reminder. In 2020, just 44,000 votes across Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin won Joe Biden the presidency. On August 12, 2024, the DNC released a memo announcing it would spend 6 figures to collect up to 9 million Democrat votes from overseas. But hey, folks, only 4.4 million U.S. citizens reside overseas, and only 2.8 million of those are of voting age. The problem is that it's easy to vote from overseas. The Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act allows online voter registrations without verification of identity or citizenship status. This is from an article in the American Thinker. Pennsylvania may be the most crucial of the 6 or 7 states described as swing states. In one way, the Dems shot themselves in the foot not selecting moderate Democrat Shapiro, the Pennsylvania governor, as Harris's VP select. How ballots are handled in Pennsylvania is critically important. The state does not require ID when voting by mail. Worse, Pennsylvania Supreme Court has eliminated signature match. They have no idea who is voting these mail ballots. The latest offense by its Supreme Court is that the ballots do not even have to be dated. You know, the Dems are crooked since they will not endorse policies on ballot security and citizenship verification. I hope we can get a red sweep this election season, and maybe we can get a nonpartisan election reform movement going. In the worst kept official secret in decades, the Fed lowered the official government funds rate by a half point. The first quarter point was a gimme, but the next quarter point was a clear nod to help in a tough race for the Democrats. Now, some of our audience might jump up and say, but Dr. Day, the Fed is supposed to be non-political. Right, and I have a bridge for sale in Brooklyn. Supposedly, the extra quarter point was due to the recent very sketchy job market data and a number of predictions of an economic slowdown. As a fiscal conservative, I still worry that this is simply too soon. Inflation is closer to 3% than the target 2%. And with the national debt and consumer debt at record levels, I favor a tougher path for the government. In a story that's still exploding as we recorded this week's episode, at least 12 are already dead and thousands were injured as pagers exploded on nearby Hezbollah terrorists. Apparently, the demented leader feared that the Israelis would spy on their mobile phones, so ordered his fellow terrorists to carry old-fashioned pagers. These apparently and somehow were booby-trapped with a signal device and a small charge. That was round one. In round two, the radios or walkie-talkies that some of them were carrying are now exploding. Hey, couldn't happen to a nicer group of terrorists. This is the crew that recently dropped a missile on a soccer field in Israel where Arab children were playing, killing a dozen of them. That's right, these were Arab children that were murdered. Putin throws his support behind Kamala Harris for president. If any of the audience needed another reason not to vote for Harris, Wall's ticket, the crazed murderer of thousands, Putin has endorsed the Harris candidacy. Wrapping up, scientists use food dye found in many places, including Doritos, to make see-through mice. Food dye transformed the skin of mice into a living window revealing blood vessels, muscle fibers, and gut contractions. This is from an oddball story in the Washington Post. They report that researchers from Stanford University injected a food dye known as yellow number 5 into the stomach, scalps, and hind legs of mice. The skin of the mice temporarily became a living window into their blood vessels, muscles, and gut. Now, while this is fascinating research based on light refraction, hey, for myself, I think I'll stick with X-rays. Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Saving America welcomes Dr. Danielle Lord. She is a native of the Pacific Northwest and has spent her career helping to develop others, creating unique curricula for organizations large and small, and served as a university professor. She holds a PhD in leadership theory. Her bio says that her superpower is helping people to connect the dots, making and discovering connections that might not have been realized before. Dr. Lord's firm is called Archetype Learning Solutions. She's recently started a webcast on USA Global Network. We welcome Dr. Danielle Lord for her first appearance on Saving America.
Well, thank you, Dr. Schein. I hope it's the first of many. This is such an important topic. I think it's very well connected with the conversations that I'm having about really making sure we can bring compassion back into the world because it's so lacking right now.
Sounds like a winner to me. As you know, we asked our guests 3 questions that we've researched in advance. So number one, tell us, our audience, about how leadership differs from management.
I am always happy to talk about this particular topic because it is still very misunderstood. And there are still plenty of people out there who are saying they're the same thing. They are not the same thing. They are very different. It is my hypothesis that our management practices are really rooted in a historical element of the industrial era in which we collectively came together and started working as humans in factories. At that point in time, that industrial era, kind of the Victorian era, it was actually illegal, at least in the Western European context of Britain, to live in poverty. It was illegal to be poor. And you had people clamoring for jobs that paid pennies per day. It was very easy to be let go or terminated from that job because someone was always waiting to pick it up. So our whole context of work is rooted in that paradigm, which was all hail the machine. The machinery, the equipment, the automation was very brand new to industry, and everything that we knew was about making sure that those machines ran efficiently, and we needed management to do that. So management, by definition, is about a transactional process that includes budgeting, prioritizing, scheduling, tasking, making sure things are staying in line with the work that needs to be done to accomplish the goals. That does not require any human relationship. And that's where leadership becomes so important, and how leadership is different from management. It's making sure that those things are happening through an influence-based positive relationship in which the leadership and the team members are working together towards those goals. That's my definition.
Fascinating. What can our audience learn from your latest book? Tell us a little bit about that.
So thank you. I just published my latest book. It's called Engaging Your Employees. We are facing an engagement deficit in this country, and I would probably say worldwide. Engagement scores are, of course, what we call employee engagement is what is defined by Gallup as the discretionary effort that our employees, or our team members, as I like to call them, put forth in the organization. For 30 years, we've been telling people that your voice matters. And for 30 years, I haven't sat across the table with executives for 30 years, but basically at the time that I have spent, about half of that around the same tables with executives, listening to their conversations, has told me that the voice doesn't matter, the voice of the employee. And from my hypothesis is that if we want to lead through a relationship, influence-based relationship, we have to have a personal relationship of presence, vulnerability, and authenticity with the people that we are leading. So my book outlines 12 heart-centered strategies that are 11 of them are completely free. It just requires you to have some vulnerability and some presence and engage with people in an entirely different level. The very same things that our employees or our team members are asking for. So that's my latest book. You can get the book. It's available on Amazon, and in the back there are 12 or 13 QR codes, and you can scan those QR codes and download a variety of tools to help you implement those heartfelt strategies.
Fascinating. And our third question is, what's the best advice you can give to a business student or early career executive about achieving success? Because we talk about, if you want to be successful, you need to be more than a manager. You have to be a leader. So where does that come in, and how would you talk to your younger self or to someone that you know?
And to all of my graduate students, I talked to them about the notion of the relationship, the leader team member relationship, and that is where you get the biggest bang from your buck. It doesn't come from ego. And that's the biggest problem that we have, I think, in our organizations today, is that we see the ego continue to perpetuate. We see the ego continuing to be rewarded. In our organizations, we are still rewarding for performance, not behavior. And there was a fascinating study, and it grew legs and walked off. I can't find my original copy, but it was from 1989 from Dr. Fred Luthans, who said that most as successful, as he defined them, so for those listening, I just used air quotes around successful, but our successful leaders are promoted based on the notion that they have made somebody else look good. And that was either through securing a large contract, bringing in a large amount of money, whatever that looked like was not necessarily always in the best interest of the team members or the people who make up the organization. So I always tell leaders, aspiring leaders in business, make sure that there's no trail of dead bodies behind you as you ascend into leadership roles. It is not about stepping on people. It is about lifting them up to make the organization a much better place. I've had my own very fascinating self-discovery, if you will, over the 2.5 years that I have been in business for myself. And I taught the innovation course. I was the lead faculty at the graduate school where I was at. And the MBA students were required to take a course on innovation. And part of that course was this idea of getting our business leaders to understand that innovation, creativity only comes when the mind is completely free of stress, the mind and the body, because it's an interconnected thing, right? The mind and the body have to be completely free of stress in order to be creative and innovative. And we're not free of stress when we have leaders that are micromanaging us, when we have leaders that are promoting toxic behavior, when we have leaders that are chastising everything that we do. And I thought I was in a position that I really was free from stress. I had executive level positions that I held and really believed that I was free from all of that. And it wasn't until 2 years into being in my own business as an business owner, that I really discovered that, wow, I am far more innovative and creative now being out there on my own than I ever was, even at the executive level, functioning at that level. So business leaders, again, in air quotes, leaders, you got to have the influence, you got to have the relationship. So when I say leaders, that's who I'm referring to, but leave the ego behind. It is really about lifting up the employees of your organization so that the organization can be successful, not necessarily you. You will be successful if you're doing the right thing.
Now, we are seeing finally an improvement in opportunities for women. Do you give different advice to women than men, since women have been used to now, gee, it's terrific, I'm moving into management, but the transition from management to leadership may be a little bit more difficult for women?
I do absolutely believe that that is a truth. And I think what happened was, in the 1980s, I think we had enough scientific research or data to really demonstrate what good leadership looked like. And that's when we did start to see women enter into those leadership positions in 1980s, 1990s. I think what happened with women is that we adopted a toxic feminism approach to leadership positions or leadership roles, thinking that I have to act just like the men acted. In fact, I have to go one step further and be more masculine and more manly than the men were. And I think what that embodied was this idea of toxic feminism. I think we had a fantastic and missed opportunity to come in as our true, authentic selves, as women who are the carriers of culture, who are known to be kind and genuine and large-hearted, and really show what great leadership looked like. I think that was a big miss.
Fascinating. And as you know, we try and keep this short so people will actually listen to these interviews. But how can our audience get more information about you and your book and the things you're working on?
Thank you. So you can call or text me at my business line, which is 253-269-2116. I take calls or text messages. You can also email me at Danielle@archetypelearningsolutions.com. And the things you think about when you're naming your business, you don't think about how long the email address is going to be. But Danielle@archetypelearningsolutions.com. That is also my website. You can find my website at that same address, archetypelearningsolutions.com.
The American higher education system is in trouble. It is time for the leaders of higher education in the United States to take stock and work on absolutely necessary reforms, or you face having it closed down. I'll speak for myself first. I came from an economically challenged background. What did I have going for me? Number one, parents who were encouraging me like crazy to focus on schoolwork. Neither one of them got past high school. And then a first-class K through 12 experience, K through 8 in a Catholic grammar school under the old system with mostly nuns teaching, heavy-duty focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. Gee, what an idea. And then after that, very good public high schools. So the teachers were committed to education. None of this union nonsense, none of this, gee, we'll go on strike. None of this will close the classroom or don't show up if you're not wearing a mask. We've got to get past that in America, folks. So I did well enough to get a full scholarship to an Ivy League college. I later realized full scholarship is not exactly a ticket to ride. I did have to have federal loan money, and I also had to work all the time that I was in college. Nothing exciting about that. That's still pretty much true today. I did find that the Ivy League school that I went to was already contaminated with leftists and commies. The positive was that I was mostly taking science and business courses that had not yet been polluted by this movement to the left. And so I made out okay. Plus, the other thing I want people to understand is because of my solid parenting and solid lower grade education, I already had a good ability to think. I was not influenced by leftist professors. I knew the difference. I knew who had their heads screwed on right, and we work from that standpoint. And I think that's important also. So, it's part of the way this thing works. But over my life, I've earned a BA at the Ivy League school, an MBA, a law degree, and a PhD. And that PhD, I went back 25 years later after a successful legal career in order to enter higher education as a professor. I've put in my time, I've worked my butt off, I've done my publications, and I've made it to a full professor level, which was my objective when I went to get my PhD some years ago. For me, education was that pathway to a real and rewarding life. And I've been able to share that with my children and hopefully my grandchildren. And that's what's important to me. And I think that the value of education, at least in my book, is not hard to understand. But we've got a lot of folks out there saying that college education is no longer valuable. Well, what are some things that could be done to move forward and to be sure that that path is well done and is valuable? But let me quickly provide a disclaimer. Not everybody needs to go to college, and not everybody needs to go to college directly out of high school. Sons took time off before they went to college. When they did hit college, they hit it with a vengeance, and they both, I'm proud to say, did very well. So that sometimes a little break in the action helps. What do we need to do now? Number one, woke classrooms must go. The real world is not woke. Anyone who tries to claim there are more than two genders, for instance, needs to be tossed out of higher ed. Communist teachers, this is America. It is success is based on capitalism. Every failed government in the world has failed due to corruption and communism. Let's get straight, folks. There's not a diversity of opinion that we need to have on this particular issue. The commies have lost, and they've lost consistently throughout the world. And if they ever gain control of the world will have lost. Every civilization, Venezuela, the USSR, Cuba, represent failed countries, people without freedoms, a lack of invention, a lack of economic success. Let's not fool ourselves on that. Number three, no connection of higher ed in many cases to the real world. Even if you are being taught literature, drama, or theology, there must be a target for the use of that education. Where will these students be in their studies? And think about it. A 20-year-old or 22-year-old today very likely will work for the next 45 to 50 years doing what, using what skills? Go woke, go broke, and that includes students. Number four, we've got to focus on intolerance. Intolerance across the board is what we're seeing in many institutions of higher education. In fact, many of the highest rated in the past. And I say in the past because again, I'm a vocal critic of Harvard. I don't think it is the school that its reputation had brought it to. And I think that's a very important consideration. Can it regain it? It has billions and billions and billions of dollars in its endowment. The answer is yes, it can regain that position, but it needs to get its head straight and along the lines of what I'm talking about in this particular episode. Educated people like myself were exposed to everything. We didn't have to like it, but we knew what it was. We did not cry in the corner. We did not attack teachers who disagreed with us. Adults understand that there are many points of view. This does not mean a student has to adopt the garbage from the left, but we certainly need students to see and understand all different points of view. Number 5, lack of return on investment. Parents who send their kids to major in vague subjects like gender studies, communications, that doesn't have a focus on PR marketing and so forth, are indeed wasting time and money. We are in a business. Call them the minimum wage workers for the future if they do not have a focus in college and take the courses that will direct them towards some specific type of activity. For instance, most grads with a psychology undergraduate degree will need to have a master's degree to get a decent job. Accept that up front. Again, I have close friends who are clinical psychologists, 6 years post-BA in order to practice their profession. It's part of the deal. I have numerous friends in human resources, psychology undergraduate degree, and then advanced training in human resources. Great HR people, but there's a focus there. Don't expect it to be delivered with the bachelor's degree. Number 5, complaints about costs while teacher salaries wither away. Oddly enough, the major complaint about college is that it costs too much. Well, guess what? We faculty are not even keeping up with the last decade's cost increases, much less the radical inflation of Bidenomics. A lot of the cost today is for non-classroom staffing and expenses. Time to examine varsity athletics and government mandates just to get started. Eliminating the U.S. Department of Education, which has been frequently mentioned by conservative advocates, certainly sounds like a good idea to me. And you say, what about standards? States can establish standards, and I don't think that the U.S. Department of Education has done anything other than make education more expensive. And I'm very critical of college athletics. Probably the most extreme example is that the Texas A&M University just fired its head football coach, and according to media reports, they owe him a payout of $76 million. Guess what, folks? That is barely less than the entire endowment of the small college where I teach. Yes, folks, ludicrous situations are happening in athletics. It's time to re-examine what we do. And by the way, I am a supporter of what are called intramural athletics. Students can play sports for fun. What's wrong with that? We, the American people, must demand our college education system that supports our society. Support schools that do that, and stop sending your money and your kids to schools that do not provide a return on investment. Business students, business persons, or consumers, business law impacts much of what you do. This segment is designed to help you get past the headlines on key stories. An international court that arbitrates disputes in elite sports has ruled against transgender swimmer Leah Thomas. Thomas, who made headlines swimming for the University of Pennsylvania women's swim team by defeating Riley Gaines. She was swimming for Kentucky at the time. Subsequently, Gaines has been on an international campaign to block biological males from using their natural muscle mass and size in competitive women's sports. Thomas brought a legal challenge to rules preventing female-identifying mature males from competing in women's events. It's very specific, folks. The forum was the Swiss-based Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS. It dismissed Thomas's request to overturn a June 22 decision by the World Aquatics to ban transgender swimmers who have been through male puberty from competing in elite women's races. This was a change in position, as the previous determination was that female-identifying male athletes could compete as long as they lowered their testosterone levels below a certain point. But the organization changed course after a scientific panel found that even after taking medication that lowered testosterone, male competitors still had a significant advantage over women. Of course, that is what Riley Gaines has been arguing with the NCAA here in the United States for at least the last 2 years. Gaines is now among a dozen women athletes who have filed suit in federal court to have NCAA follow the international court. They have specifically noted their discomfort in using the same locker rooms as Thomas and other transgender athletes. So this is something that's still unfolding, pretty interesting situation. Voting Rights Act court ruling could dramatically shift political control of Congress. This is based on a report from the Heritage Foundation and other sources. The Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals has issued a decision that stops the political misuse of the Voting Rights Act by local politicians to create one-party districts, while at the same time preventing districts that might allow some minority representation. The case involves voting districts in Galveston County, Texas. The concern was that this approach could disenfranchise minority voters. Because the Fifth Circuit covers federal courts in Louisiana and Mississippi, in addition to Texas, this could have a major impact on other elections, such as statewide office and congressional seats. The case in this particular situation is Petaway versus Galveston County, which was decided by the full appeals court bench, not just a subpanel of the court. The case was brought because after the 2020 census results, the county changed a majority-minority district by moving the line so there was no longer a majority-minority district in Galveston County. The decision concluded that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act does not protect or authorize coalition claims either expressly or by implication. Coalition districts are districts in which no single minority group constitutes a majority of the voters. Instead, in those districts, there is a combination of different minority, racial, ethnic, or language groups that make up a majority of the voters, according to the report. The text of Section 2 states that practices that results in a denial or abridgment of the right of any citizen to vote on account of race or color or in contravention of the provisions protecting minorities. The process is unlawful and it is not equally open to participation by members of a class of citizens defined by race, color, or inclusion in a language minority. The report that I reviewed suggested that the GOP could gain some seats due to this ruling, although I'm not exactly sure how that would work. This wide-ranging ruling could produce changes in future voting districts within the Fifth Circuit states, but this is unlikely to be in effect before the November 5 election. Doctor charged in connection with Matthew Perry's death to appear in court after a plea deal. In a report from numerous sources, including the Associated Press, more legal news has developed regarding the sad and untimely death of Matthew Perry. Perry, of course, became famous during the 10-year run of the TV sitcom Friends. I have to admit, I was never a fan of the show. However, if nothing else, Perry was a human being and should have been treated as one. He was found dead in October 2023 from an overdose of ketamine. He was only 54. In an all too familiar situation, he was legally prescribed ketamine for depression by his regular doctor. However, he wanted to take more of this drug. Perry, in his 2022 memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, in which he admitted to having an addicted personality, in a complex scheme, two doctors, his personal assistant, a friend, and someone known as the ketamine queen, or a dealer, were involved in getting him access to quantities of the drug obviously beyond his prescribed amount. And this in turn led to his death. Most recently, Dr. Mark Chavez of San Diego reached a plea agreement with prosecutors and will testify in the upcoming October trials of the two remaining defendants. Previously, Perry's personal assistant and the friend who acted as a messenger have also pled guilty. Note that for Dr. Chavez, pleading guilty is a very serious matter. He will likely lose his medical license and he could be in prison for up to 10 years. The two defendants who have pled not guilty are the other doctor involved in the case, Dr. Salvador Plasencia and Josephine Senka. She is a woman who authorities allege is a dealer who sold the actor the lethal dose of ketamine. For these two defendants, they are charged with causing the death of Perry and could face life in prison if convicted. It is well known that medical doctors in the United States can make very good incomes. It is unfortunate indeed to see that greed, even for people who already can make a significant income, would risk their livelihoods for a few extra $1,000. And our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Saving America welcomes Ken Peterson. He has more than 30 years of experience developing and implementing enterprise risk management and human resource consulting solutions. Peterson founded Churchill and Harriman C&H in 1986. Since 1997, C&H has developed and implemented enterprise risk management and third-party risk management solutions for large enterprises. C&H helps clients select and implement controls, processes, and tools that identify, measure, and manage enterprise risk. Under Peterson's leadership, C&H advises clients on enterprise risk strategy in healthcare and financial services, as well as helping government agencies improve critical infrastructure. C&H also serves Fortune 100 clients in healthcare, defense, entertainment, finance, insurance, life sciences, manufacturing, mobile commerce, technology, and transportation. C&H is an assessment firm member of the Shared Assessments Program. Peterson is an active leader in the international standards community. C&H earned the distinction of being the first approved ISO 27001 and ISO 22301 associate consultancy by a leading global registrar. We welcome Ken Peterson for his first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you, Dave.
Just like I said, sometimes I have to cut these bios a little bit so we'll have time to ask the questions and all that. But what a great background, and it's our pleasure to have you here. Our first, as you know, we ask our guests 3 questions. Explain to our audience why firms need to identify, measure, and manage enterprise cybersecurity risk.
Well, there are a number of very formal reasons in answering that questions, Dave. Number one, industry and government require that firms identify, measure, and manage their risks now. It's simply a matter of the depth and breadth that an individual industry or a public entity has to do so. And increasingly, organizations at the board level are required through public filings and through their investor relations functions to produce the outputs of the identification, the mitigation, and the listing of those formal risks when they go through these annual processes. So there's a very formal reason for doing so. Another reason for doing so, Dave, is that particularly at a time like this, when budgets are tighter, is that you want to prioritize those risks, so that if you only have a certain budget to attack these risks in a given year, you want to attack them from what we have identified as your chief risk, and then work your way down that list as far as you can.
Wow, so it's certainly something we hear so much about cybersecurity today, and there's so many different aspects to it. And our second question, what are the biggest cybersecurity risks that you see for your clients as we charge through the 2020s?
I think right now, Dave, we're in an interesting time for 2 chief reasons. Number one is the increased use of artificial intelligence, depending upon the organization, whether they're a commercial enterprise or a public enterprise, such as a federal or a state agency. Everyone is looking to leverage artificial intelligence. And again, depending upon the industry that you're in or whether you're a federal agency or a state agency or a local agency, there's going to be rules and regulations that you have to adhere to formally if you choose to use artificial intelligence. So that's the primary reason. Another reason for this, Dave, is that because we've practiced now at an international level with the most discreet clientele in the world in financial services, healthcare, other industries, and for public entities, every great once in a while, the stars get aligned and there's a confluence of burgeoning compliance requirements that are put upon industry or are put upon a public entity at the federal, state, or local level. This is one of those times. So rather than work your way through these risk assessment criterias or these risk management frameworks, you need a formal advisory partner like we are to help you optimize your resources as you attack those, because each one of those is going to have a different standard of care and is going to have different requirements that are put upon you that you're going to have to adhere to in order to satisfy those individual requirements. So it's really twofold right now. So it's a particularly interesting time, Dave.
And now, just to clarify one point, you mentioned the significance of artificial intelligence. Does that make the job of cybersecurity more difficult? And if so, what's happening there?
It does, Dave. We have across industry and to some degree in public entities, as I've just referenced, elements of artificial intelligence has been used for more than a decade. Some of the viewers might be familiar with the phrase continuous monitoring. Well, in the cybersecurity world, continuous monitoring often utilizes elements of artificial intelligence and has for some time. Now we're at a point where in different elements of cybersecurity, whether it's a deepening of the use of AI in continuous monitoring or in other elements of cybersecurity, the use of artificial intelligence is on the rise. And so there are institutions that are already, and I know this because we are working with clients now that are in this category of critical infrastructure. Organizations are looking at frameworks such as the NIST artificial intelligence framework or the ISO International Standards Organization artificial intelligence standard, in order so that they can produce artifacts that are leveraged within their environment to produce artifacts that are then shared twofold, Dave, with their internal users, whether it be investor relations or compliance or their legal community, and simultaneously use with their external stakeholders, such as their customers, their prospect customers, or their regulators. So there's a huge opportunity to develop a proper strategy based on these accepted new burgeoning AI frameworks and standards that we can apply for a client to help them satisfy any such requirements. And we're doing that today.
Fascinating stuff. And our third question today is, CNH has an impressive list of clients in many major industries. For our younger consultants hoping to follow in your footsteps, what do you recommend as an approach? How do you get rolling, and what should they be doing?
Well, the work that we do in the risk assessment discipline, Dave, is normally categorized today under what's termed governance, risk, and compliance. You'll often see the acronym GRC. So if someone was interested in moving into risk assessments, they would normally find those opportunities listed in the public domain under GRC, right? And normally, the way that either private industry or a state or local or federal agency executes risk assessments is as part of a team. So normally a junior person would work in a role that they're found to be comfortable with, and then once they prove that they can formally execute all those responsibilities, like in most other disciplines, Dave, you move up in the ranks and your responsibilities are expanded upon. So that's the typical path in. I will tell you that from my own experience, Dave, what attracted me to the risk assessment world, and I hope my enthusiasm comes across, is that there's a level of rigor and there's a level of execution and the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's. You have to be very precise in this discipline to produce the requirements and the outputs that we do, that are depended on by organizations like the Department of Homeland Security, or a federal agency like Health and Human Services, or the EU. These are some of the organizations that depend on outputs that either we directly contribute to or we produce firsthand. That's what's exciting about this discipline, sir.
Fantastic. And Ken, obviously we just touched the tip of the iceberg here. How can our audience get more information about you and your firm?
Well, they can look up Churchill and Harriman. Our website is C for cat, H for Harry, U for United, S for states.com. There's a lot of information on our website. And we also, including elements of risk assessment. For example, we recently did a webinar for the automotive ISAC, which really gets into some deep risk assessments that we've done for private industry and for government. So I would point people directly either to social media or to our website, Dave.
Very great stuff. And again, we really appreciate your being here today. As we grow up, a common reference for success or failure is the letter grade. Whether we are in grammar school or college, we all want an A grade and certainly regard an F as a big failure. Here at Saving America, we scan the news for reports of celebrities, politicians, or others who just end up in the public eye. So the A grades are awarded to people and organizations for great service to their communities, and the F grades, of course, are unfortunately more common, are awarded to those who need to do a lot better. The badge of dishonor today belongs to well-known Katie Couric, the former host of the Today Show and an alleged journalist. She was on a talk show recently and was asked how she viewed Trump voters. And we're going to quote, "The socioeconomic disparities are a lot, and class resentment is a lot, and anti-intellectualism and elitism is what is driving many of these anti-establishment people, which are Trump voters. So I think that is a huge problem we have to address." So voting for Trump is a major problem that people like Katie Couric need to address. That's kind of interesting. Katie Couric is a graduate of the University of Virginia. I hold 2 graduate degrees from that well-regarded university. I take no joy in a fellow Cavalier being this ignorant. Maybe years of fame and fortune have taken a toll on good old Katie. For the record, again, I am not a big supporter of Trump. However, he is the only candidate for president this time that I can support. I do feel that voters of many stripes and descriptions support him. Recall that good old Hillary Clinton referred to the Trump supporters as deplorables, and in my opinion, that helped her to lose the 2016 presidential election. And I see Katie doing that in this particular situation. So, Saving America awards today's F grade to Katie Couric for both being blind to today's realities and failing to connect with a large swath of Americans who support Trump. Don't believe the headlines, folks. The lefties lie like usual. A term I used to hear a lot was spin doctors. It usually referred to public relations pros who could make a total bomb of a movie sound like it was the best movie you ever could see. The communist scum dominating the slopstream media and the Democrat Party love it when they think they have a leg up on anything that looks like a conservative situation. In current parlance, a red state is a conservative state and a blue state is a Democrat state. The irony of this is that during the Cold War, we called the commies Reds. So even the choice colors are part of the current day spin by the slopstream media and their colleagues. In any event, the dummies like to point out that some of the worst crime stats are coming from some of the red states. How can this be true? Aren't those the states with the right to carry gun laws and tough on crime policies? Well, you see, it's a little bit different than that. The truth is in the stats, which the liars do not want the public to actually analyze. Let's take our nearby neighbor. I'm in Houston, Texas, up the road about 2-3 hour drive. Travis County, Texas, with the base of Austin, Texas, the heart of liberalism and Marxism in the state of Texas. Place is dominated by a whack liberal operation. It has runaway crime. It has the 15th highest crime rate in the country, including homicides. Check out the homicide rates by county instead of looking at state averages. Deep Blue Harris County, seat of Houston, Texas, is a heavily criminal area, despite the fact that it's located in a red state. In fact, currently undergoing a mayor's race where the number one issue of all of the candidates, including the two leading Democrat candidates, is crime. Yes, folks, crime. So hopefully, maybe even they're getting the picture that maybe being soft on crime is not the way to win friends and get votes. A Heritage Society report states, on average, counties that voted for Republican Donald Trump have a lower homicide rate, 4.06 per 100,000 people, while counties that voted for Biden have a higher rate of 6.52% per 100,000 people. Folks, that's a 50% higher homicide rate in red counties and in blue counties or Democrat-controlled counties versus red counties controlled by generally more conservative GOP folks. So don't let the slopstream media mislead you. Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you next week.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.